The detention facility floated in the darkness of space like a cold metal fortress. Inside its white corridors, Guard Corporal Tae-yang walked toward his new assignment with steady steps. His black uniform was crisp and clean, his face calm. He had been transferred to the high-value detention ward just 3 days ago, and today would be his first real shift guarding the facility's most unusual prisoner. The other guards called her the Silent One, or sometimes the Ghost Princess. Her real name was Hana, and she had not spoken a single word in 6 years. Tae-yang entered the security briefing room where Warden Kresh, a massive creature with gray skin and small, cruel eyes, waited for him. The warden's species, the Thulians, were known throughout the Galactic Confederation for their harsh nature and love of control. "You will be assigned to Cell Block 7, Kresh said, his voice like gravel scraping metal. "The Velrith female is there. She is the last of her kind. 6 years ago, her planet was destroyed. She was the only survivor. We believe she knows what happened, but she refuses to speak." Tae-yang nodded, keeping his expression neutral. He had read the basic file already. Princess Hana of Velrith, age 24 in human years. Former royalty of a dead civilization. The report said that diplomats, psychologists, and even interrogation specialists from a dozen different species had tried to make her talk. Nothing worked. "Why does she matter so much?" Tae-yang asked quietly. Kresh's eyes narrowed. "Because someone destroyed an entire planet, human. Someone committed the greatest crime in Confederation history. And she is the only witness. If she would just speak, we could find justice. Or revenge. Whichever comes first." The warden led Tae-yang through several locked doors and down a long corridor. The high-value detention ward was different from the rest of the facility. The cells here had transparent barriers instead of solid walls. Prisoners could see out, and guards could see in. It was designed to prevent secrets and suicide. They stopped in front of the last cell. Inside, a young woman sat on the floor in the corner. Her skin was pale blue, smooth like polished stone. Her hair was long and dark, falling across her shoulders like a curtain of black water. She wore a simple gray uniform, the standard clothing for all detainees. Her eyes were large and completely white, with no visible pupils, a feature of the Velrith species. She did not move when they approached. She did not look at them. She simply sat there, staring at nothing, her hands folded in her lap. "She sits like that for hours," Kresh said with disgust in his voice. "Sometimes days. Other guards have tried everything to get a reaction. They tap on the barrier, shout at her, flash lights in her face. Nothing works. She is like a statue." Tae-yang studied the princess carefully. Something about the way she sat bothered him, but he could not identify what it was yet. "What do you want me to do?" he asked. "Your job," Kresh snapped. "Guard her. Keep her alive. Report any changes in behavior. And if by some miracle she speaks, you will inform me immediately." The warden left, his heavy footsteps echoing down the corridor. Tae-yang stood outside the cell for a long moment, just watching. Hana did not acknowledge his presence. Her breathing was slow and shallow. Her posture was perfectly still. To anyone else, she might have looked peaceful, meditative even. But Tae-yang had been a combat medic before becoming a guard. He had worked with soldiers suffering from severe trauma. He had seen people break in ways that did not show on the surface. And as he watched Hana, he began to notice small details that others had probably missed. Her stillness was not peaceful. It was rigid, controlled. Her hands were folded, but her fingers were pressed together too tightly. Her breathing was shallow, but it quickened slightly when footsteps approached from distant corridors. And most importantly, she had positioned herself in the corner of the cell that was farthest from the door and gave her a clear line of sight to anyone entering. These were not the behaviors of someone at peace. These were survival responses, defensive positioning, hypervigilance, the signs of someone living in a constant state of fear. Tae-yang made a decision in that moment. He would not be like the other guards. He would not tap on the barrier or try to provoke a response. He would simply do his job, quietly and respectfully. The days passed slowly in the detention facility. Time had little meaning here, where artificial lights stayed bright 20 hours a day, and the corridors always looked the same. Taeyang worked his shifts, walking the patrol routes, checking security monitors, and maintaining his post outside Cell Block 7. He watched Hana, but not in the way others did. He did not stare or make her feel observed. He simply remained aware of her presence while respecting her space. When he entered the corridor, he made sure his footsteps were audible, giving her warning of his approach. When he needed to check something near her cell, he moved slowly and kept his distance from the barrier. The other guards thought he was wasting his time. "She is broken," said one guard, a tall insect-like creature named Vrex. 6 years of silence means her mind is gone. "You are being too soft, human." But Taeyang ignored them. He had learned long ago that kindness was not the same as weakness. On his 5th day, something changed. Taeyang was walking his usual patrol route past Hana's cell. He had announced his presence with his footsteps as always, maintaining his steady, predictable pace. As he passed the transparent barrier, he glanced toward her. Just a quick check to ensure she was unharmed. And her eyes moved. It was such a small movement that he almost missed it. Just the slightest shift in her gaze, following him for perhaps half a second before returning to stare at nothing. Taeyang's heart rate increased, but he kept walking at the same steady pace. He did not stop. He did not react visibly. He simply continued his patrol, as if nothing had happened. But everything had changed. For 6 years, Hana had been described as catatonic, completely unresponsive to her environment, but that tiny eye movement proved something important. She was aware. She was watching. She had simply chosen not to show it. Until now. During his break, Taeyang sat in the guard station and thought carefully about what he had witnessed. Why had she looked at him? What was different about today compared to the dozens of previous days? He reviewed his own behavior over the past week. He had been quiet, predictable, and respectful. He had not demanded anything from her. He had not tried to force a reaction. He had simply existed near her without being a threat. Maybe that was the difference. Taeyang accessed the facility's database and began researching Velrith culture. There was not much information available since the species was extinct, but he found a few academic papers written by xenoanthropologists who had studied them before the planet's destruction. What he learned surprised him. The Velrith had been an unusual species in the Galactic Confederation. Their entire culture was built around silence. They communicated primarily through gestures, artistic expression, and bioluminescent patterns that appeared on their skin. Spoken words were considered sacred, reserved only for the most important moments in life: births, deaths, marriage bonds, and declarations of war. To a Velrith, being constantly pressured to speak would be like being forced to scream during a sacred ceremony. It would be culturally traumatic. Taeyang sat back in his chair, a plan forming in his mind. Everyone had been approaching Hana the wrong way. They had been treating her silence as a problem to be solved, an obstacle to be overcome. But what if her silence was not a symptom of trauma, but a response to it? What if the only way to help her was to respect the very thing everyone else was trying to break? He returned to his post with new understanding. As he walked past Hana's cell, he did something he had never done before. He placed his right hand over his heart and bowed his head slightly, a traditional Velrith gesture of respect he had learned from his research. He did not look at her. He did not wait for a response. He simply offered the gesture and continued walking. Behind him, inside the cell, Hana's white eyes followed his movement down the corridor. And for the first time in 6 years, something like curiosity flickered across her face. 3 weeks had passed since Taeyang first offered the traditional Velrith greeting to Hana. In that time, something remarkable had begun to happen, though so slowly and quietly that most people would never notice it. Tae Yang had continued his research into Velrith culture during every spare moment. He spent his rest periods in the facility's small library, reading academic papers and watching old documentary footage from before the planet's destruction. He learned about their art, their customs, their complex silent language. The more he learned, the more he understood that Hana's silence was not emptiness. It was full of meaning he had been unable to read. He also learned about Velrith poetry. They created elaborate patterns with colored stones, arranged in specific ways that told stories and expressed emotions. Each stone's position, color, and distance from others carried meaning as precise as words on a page. This gave Tae Yang an idea. The facility had strict rules about what could be brought into detention cells, but small approved items were occasionally permitted. During a routine cell cleaning shift, Tae Yang quietly left something behind. A single, smooth black stone, about the size of his thumb, placed carefully on the corner of the small table in Hana's cell. He did not announce what he had done. He did not wait to see her reaction. He simply finished his duties and left. The next day, when he returned for his shift, the stone had been moved. It now sat in the exact center of the table. Positioned with careful precision, Tae Yang felt his pulse quicken. This was communication. Over the following weeks, he left more items during his shifts. A piece of cloth in deep purple, the color of Velrith royalty. A small plant with blue leaves. A smooth white pebble. He never spoke about what he was doing. Never drew attention to the gifts. They simply appeared, one at a time, during his cleaning rotations, and Hana responded. She began arranging the items in patterns. At first, the patterns were simple, but as more items accumulated, they grew more complex. Tae Yang photographed them and spent hours comparing them to the Velrith poetry structures he had studied. Slowly, painstakingly, he began to understand what she was saying. One pattern meant loneliness. Another meant fear. A third, which appeared after Tae Yang had left a small carving of a bird, meant memory of home. They were having a conversation, not with words, but with the silent language of her people. This did not go unnoticed. Dr. Nara, the facility's human xenopsychologist, requested a meeting with Tae Yang one morning. She was a small woman, with kind eyes and gray hair pulled back in a neat bun. Her office was filled with books and soft lighting, very different from the harsh white corridors outside. "Guard Tae Yang," she said as he entered. "I have been reviewing the security footage from Cell Block 7. I have noticed your interactions with Princess Hana. Or perhaps I should say, your lack of interactions." Tae Yang remained standing, his hands clasped behind his back. "I perform my duties according to regulations, Doctor." Dr. Nara smiled slightly. "You do. But you also leave items in her cell. You use Velrith gestures when you pass, and you have checked out every available text on Velrith culture from our library." She gestured to a chair. "Please, sit. You are not in trouble." "Quite the opposite." Tae Yang sat cautiously. "I have been advocating for trauma-informed care for Princess Hana since I arrived here 2 years ago," Dr. Nara continued. "But Warden Kresh and the Confederation security officials believe that patience is weakness. They want results, answers, confessions. They do not understand that you cannot force healing." She pulled up several images on her desk screen. They showed Hana's cell and the patterns she had created with Tae Yang's gifts. "But you understand," Dr. Nara said softly. "You have done in 3 weeks what teams of specialists could not do in 6 years. You have made her respond." "How?" Tae Yang considered his answer carefully. "I stopped trying to make her into what we needed her to be. I started respecting who she actually is." Dr. Nara nodded slowly. "That is wisdom, young man. I would like to work with you, if you are willing. I believe together we might help her truly heal." "What about Warden Kresh?" "What the warden does not know will not hurt him," Dr. Nara replied. "Continue what you are doing. I will handle the politics. But politics, as it turned out, could not be avoided. Commander Brix arrived at the facility 2 days later. He was a coordination security chief, a massive reptilian creature with golden scales and cold eyes. He brought with him an air of authority and barely contained impatience. Taeyang was called to a security meeting, along with Dr. Nara, Warden Kresh, and several other officials. 6 years, Commander Brix said, his voice rumbling through the conference room. 6 years, we have kept this female alive and protected. 6 years, we have waited for information, and we have learned nothing. This is unacceptable. She has experienced severe trauma, Dr. Nara protested. She needs time, support, and proper psychological care. She needs to do her duty to the Confederation, Brix snapped. An entire planet was destroyed. Billions died. Someone is responsible, and she knows who. Her personal feelings are irrelevant compared to justice for the fallen. Forcing her will not work, Dr. Nara insisted. Then perhaps we need stronger methods. Commander Brix activated a holographic display showing complex medical equipment. Neural extraction technology. It can retrieve memories directly from a subject's brain. It is painful and carries significant risks, including death or permanent brain damage. But it is effective. Taeyang felt ice in his stomach. You want to torture her? Every eye in the room turned to him. It was improper for a low-ranking guard to speak in such a meeting, but the words had escaped before he could stop them. Commander Brix regarded him coldly. I want justice. If she will not give it willingly, we will take it. That is illegal under Confederation law, Dr. Nara said firmly. Neural extraction requires the subject's consent. Unless the subject is deemed a threat to Confederation security? Warden Kresh added. And Taeyang realized the warden had been planning this all along, which I believe applies here. The meeting ended badly. Commander Brix gave them 1 month to produce results before he would return with authorization for neural extraction. That night, Taeyang could not sleep. He lay in his small quarters, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Hana sitting alone in her cell. She had survived the destruction of her entire world. She had endured 6 years of isolation and pressure. And now they wanted to cut into her mind, to take what she refused to give. It was wrong. Everything about it was wrong. He got up and returned to the library. He needed to understand more, to find some way to help her before Commander Brix returned. That was when he found the restricted file. It was buried deep in the facility's database, classified well above his security clearance. But someone had been careless, and Taeyang's access from Dr. Nara's office earlier that day had not been fully revoked. The file was about the destruction of Velrith. Taeyang read through it with growing horror. The official story was that an unknown enemy had attacked the planet with weapons of mass destruction, sterilizing the surface and killing everyone. A tragedy, but one committed by external forces. But this file told a different story. There were intelligence reports suggesting the attack had come from within the Confederation itself. There were financial records showing massive resource transfers from Velrith to unknown accounts just before the attack. There were communications that had been deleted but partially recovered. Someone in the Confederation had destroyed Velrith. And then, they had covered it up. Taeyang sat back, his mind racing. No wonder Hana would not speak. She was not just a witness to murder. She was a witness to conspiracy at the highest levels of galactic government. Speaking would mark her for death. She had stayed silent to survive. A soft alarm sounded. Taeyang looked up to see a security alert on his personal communicator. There was an incident in cell block 7. He ran. When he reached Hana's cell, he found chaos. 2 guards were inside, trying to restrain her. She was fighting them, her movements quick and desperate. The patterns she had built with Taeyang's gifts were destroyed, scattered across the floor. What happened? Taeyang demanded. She attacked us, one guard snarled. We came to collect the items in her cell for security inspection, and she went crazy. But Taeyang could see the truth. The guards had destroyed her patterns deliberately. They had taken the only form of communication she had and crushed it for their own amusement. "Get out," Taeyang said quietly. "What?" "I said get out, both of you. Now." They laughed. "You cannot order us around, human. You are just a junior guard." Taeyang stepped forward, and something in his expression made them hesitate. He had been a soldier once. He had seen combat. And in that moment, all of that old training came back to the surface. "Get out." They left, muttering complaints. Taeyang entered the cell slowly, his hands visible and empty. Hana was backed into her corner, breathing hard, her white eyes wide and frightened. She looked like a trapped animal. He knelt down and began gathering the scattered items. The stone, the cloth, the plant, the pebbles. He arranged them carefully on the table, not in any particular pattern, just gathering them safely. Then he did something he had never done before. He spoke directly to her. "I am sorry," he said softly in her language, using the few Velrith words he had learned. "I am sorry they hurt you. I am sorry I could not protect your words." Hana stared at him. Her breathing slowly calmed. Taeyang stood and backed toward the door. As he reached the threshold, he spoke again, this time in common tongue. "You are safe now," he said. "I promise you that. Whatever happens, I will keep you safe." He left the cell and returned to his post. Behind him, Hana stood in the center of her cell, staring at the closed door. Her hands were shaking, and in her mind, for the first time in 6 years, she considered the possibility that he might actually mean it. The facility alarm screamed through the corridors like a wounded animal. Red emergency lights flashed, turning everything into a nightmare of shadows and blood-colored illumination. Taeyang ran through the chaos, his heart pounding against his ribs. It was supposed to be a routine security drill. That was what the announcement had said. But Taeyang had seen the guards moving with too much purpose, had heard the whispered commands in languages he was not supposed to understand. This was not a drill. They were coming for Hana. He reached cell block 7 just as 2 transport officers were opening her cell door. They wore full combat gear, and one carried restraints designed for dangerous prisoners. Hana stood in the center of her cell, perfectly still, but Taeyang could see the terror in her white eyes. "Stop," he said, stepping between them and the cell entrance. The lead transport officer, a hulking creature covered in thick armor plating, looked down at Taeyang with contempt. "Move aside, human. We have orders to transfer the prisoner to a secure medical facility." "Medical facility?" Taeyang's hand moved to the weapon at his hip. "You mean the neural extraction laboratory? That is classified information." "It is murder," Taeyang said flatly. "And I will not let it happen." The officer laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "You will not let it happen? You are one guard. We are a full transport team, with authorization from Commander Brix himself. You cannot stop this." Taeyang knew he was right. In a straight fight, he would lose. But he was not planning to fight straight. He triggered the emergency containment protocol on the cell block's control panel, something only guards could access in case of a prisoner escape. Instantly, blast doors began slamming down throughout the sector, separating cell block 7 from the rest of the facility. Alarms blared even louder. "What have you done?" the transport officer shouted, but Taeyang was already moving. He entered Hana's cell, grabbed her hand, and pulled her toward the maintenance access panel at the back wall. Every cell had one for repair crews. Most people forgot they existed. "Trust me," he said to her in Velrith, using the precious few words he had learned. "Please, trust me." Hana stared at him for one eternal second. Then, she nodded. Taeyang ripped open the access panel and pushed her inside. He followed, pulling the panel closed behind them, just as the transport officers reached the cell. They tumbled into the narrow maintenance tunnel beyond, landing hard on cold metal grating. "Go," Taeyang urged, pointing down the tunnel. "Move." They ran through the darkness, their footsteps echoing off metal walls. Behind them, Taeyang heard the transport officers breaking through the access panel. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness. Searching. The maintenance tunnels formed a maze beneath the facility. Taeyang had studied the maps during his training, but navigating them in the dark, while being chased, was something else entirely. He led Hana through turn after turn, always moving deeper, always trying to stay ahead of their pursuers. They came to a junction where the tunnel split in 3 directions. Taeyang paused, trying to remember the map. Left led to the waste processing systems. Right led back toward the main facility. Center led down to the power generation level. He chose center, hoping the noise and heat from the generators would mask their presence. They climbed down a vertical ladder, descended 3 more levels, and finally emerged into a small chamber filled with humming machinery. The air was hot and smelled of ozone and oil. Dim emergency lights cast everything in shades of orange and black. Taeyang checked the door they had entered through, then wedged a piece of metal debris against it. It would not stop their pursuers for long, but it might buy them a few minutes. He turned to check on Hana and froze. She was having a panic attack. Her breathing came in short, desperate gasps. Her eyes were wide and unfocused. Her hands shook violently. She backed into the corner of the chamber, pressing herself against the wall as if trying to disappear into it. Taeyang recognized what was happening. The confined space, the darkness, the pursuit, all of it was triggering something deep and terrible in her mind. He remembered reading about the attack on Velrith. The survivors had been few because most people had been trapped in underground shelters when the weapons hit. Hana had probably escaped from darkness and death before. Now, she was trapped in darkness again. He approached slowly, keeping his movements calm and predictable. He did not touch her, just sat down on the floor a few feet away. "Hana," he said softly, "listen to my voice. Just my voice." She did not respond. Her breathing grew faster, more desperate. Taeyang made a decision. He began speaking in Korean, his native language, telling her a story from his childhood. It did not matter that she could not understand the words. What mattered was the rhythm, the tone, the calm, steady sound of a human voice in the darkness. He told her about getting lost in a market when he was 7 years old, about wandering through crowds of strangers, terrified and alone, about a kind old woman who had found him crying and stayed with him until his mother came. He spoke slowly, letting each word flow into the next, like water over stones. Gradually, incredibly, Hana's breathing began to slow. Her eyes focused on him. She was listening, using the sound of his voice as an anchor to pull herself back from the edge of panic. When her breathing had steadied, Taeyang switched back to common tongue. "I do not know what you witnessed," he said quietly. "I do not know who hurt you or who is hunting you. But I know you are alone, and you are terrified, and that ends now. I am going to get you somewhere. Safe." He looked directly into her white eyes and spoke with absolute conviction. "You are safe now." 3 words, simple words, but they carried the weight of a promise that could not be broken. Hana stared at him for a long moment. Something seemed to crack inside her, like ice breaking in the spring. Her lips moved, forming shapes they had not made in 6 years. When sound came out, it was hoarse and rough, barely more than a whisper, but it was unmistakably speech. "No one is safe." Taeyang felt the world shift around him. After 6 years of silence, Hana had spoken. And her first words were a warning. "What do you mean?" he asked gently. Hana closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, there was a terrible sadness in them. The dam had broken. The words began to flow. "They are coming," she whispered. "They have always been coming. That is why I stayed silent. If I spoke, if I told anyone what I know, they would find me and kill me. But they have found me anyway." "Who?" "The ones who murdered my world." Hana's voice grew stronger as she spoke, as if remembering how to use it. "Everyone thinks Velrith was destroyed, by an outside enemy. That is what the Confederation told everyone. But it is a lie. She moved closer to Taeyang, her words tumbling out faster now. 6 years of silence releasing all at once. My father was king. He discovered something terrible. Some members of the Confederation Council were stealing from the junior species. Resources, technology, even people. They had been doing it for over 100 years. My father found proof. He was going to present it to the full Galactic Assembly. Taeyang felt cold understanding wash over him. They killed him to stop him. They killed everyone, Hana said, and her voice broke. They sterilized the entire planet. Billions of people. My mother, my brothers, everyone I ever knew. All to hide their crimes. But you survived. My father knew they were coming. He sent me away hours before the attack with a data crystal containing all the proof. But the crystal was not enough. They would have found it, destroyed it. So, my father did something else. He used Velrith biotechnology to encode the data into my DNA itself. The evidence is not just with me. It is me. I am the proof of their crimes. I. Taeyang sat back, stunned. This was bigger than he had imagined. This was not just murder. This was conspiracy. At the highest levels of galactic government. That is why I could not speak, Hana continued. Every intelligence agency in the Confederation has been looking for that data. If I revealed myself, if I let anyone know what I carried, they would come for me. So I stayed silent. I pretended to be broken, empty. I let them think there was nothing inside me worth taking. But they are coming anyway, Taeyang said. Yes. Commander Bricks. The neural extraction. All of it. Someone on the council must have decided it was time to eliminate the last piece of evidence. They probably planned to make it look like an accident during the procedure. The wedged door rattled. Someone was trying to get in. Taeyang stood quickly, his military training taking over. He scanned the chamber, looking for another exit. There was a ventilation shaft high on the wall, large enough for a person to crawl through. Can you climb? He asked. Hana nodded. They stacked equipment crates to reach the shaft. Taeyang boosted Hana up first, then pulled himself after her. They crawled through the narrow space, just as the door behind them crashed open. This way, Taeyang whispered, leading her through the ventilation system. He had no plan, no destination. He just knew they had to keep moving. They emerged 20 minutes later in a storage area near the facility's docking bay. Taeyang peered through the access grate and saw transport ships below. If they could reach one, if they could somehow escape the facility entirely. Taeyang, a familiar voice called softly from below. He looked down and saw Dr. Nara standing beside a small cargo shuttle. She gestured frantically for them to come down. Taeyang looked at Hana. Do you trust her? Do you? Hana asked back, and he realized that she was trusting his judgment completely. Yes, he said. They dropped down from the ventilation shaft. Dr. Nara hurried them toward the shuttle. I have been searching for you, she said quickly. I know what they are planning. Agent Vorn is here. He is not Confederation security. He is an assassin. The entire facility has been compromised. We need to leave now. Where can we go? Taeyang asked. Anywhere but here. Dr. Nara started the shuttle's engines. But as they boarded the shuttle, Hana grabbed Taeyang's arm. She looked at him with her strange white eyes, and there was something new in them now. Not just fear, but determination. If we run, they will never stop hunting us, she said. The only way to end this is to expose the truth, to make it public, to make it impossible for them to hide anymore. That is dangerous, Taeyang said. Hana smiled slightly, the first smile he had ever seen on her face. Then we run together. Together, we are dangerous. Dr. Nara sealed the shuttle door. We need to go now. As the shuttle lifted off and shot toward the stars, alarms blared throughout the facility. They were fugitives now, hunted by one of the most powerful organizations in the galaxy. But Hana was no longer silent. And somehow, impossibly, that changed everything. The small shuttle shook as energy blasts exploded around it. Dr. Nara gripped the controls, her knuckles white, steering them through the darkness of space while pursuit ships closed in from behind. Taeyang sat in the co-pilot seat, monitoring the scanner, while Hana strapped herself into a passenger seat, her face calm despite the danger. 3 ships on our tail, Taeyang reported. They are gaining. How far to human space? Dr. Nara asked, through gritted teeth. Taeyang checked the navigation display. 4 hours at maximum speed, but we will run out of fuel in 2. Another blast rocked the shuttle. Warning lights flashed across the control panel. We are not going to make it, Dr. Nara said. From the back, Hana spoke up, her newly returned voice steady. Yes, we are. Because you are going to use the emergency distress beacon. That will tell everyone where we are, Dr. Nara protested. Exactly, Hana said. Right now, the assassins can destroy us quietly, and no one would ever know. But if you send a public distress signal, if you make this chase visible to the entire Confederation, they cannot kill us without exposing themselves. They will have to back off or risk revealing the whole conspiracy. Taeyang looked at her with newfound respect. That is clever. I am royalty, Hana said simply. I was trained in strategy before I could walk. Dr. Nara triggered the beacon. Immediately, their location and situation broadcast across every Confederation frequency. Within seconds, responses began flooding in. Shuttle vessel. This is Confederation Patrol 7. What is your emergency? All ships. Civilian distress beacon, activated in Sector 9. Responding units, report. This is the human cargo ship Dawn Runner. We see your beacon. Do you need assistance? The pursuit ships fell back slightly. They could not attack now, not with dozens of witnesses watching the situation unfold. This is Dr. Nara of the Detention Facility Research Division. Dr. Nara broadcast on open channels. We are fleeing from unauthorized armed forces, attempting to capture or kill a protected witness, requesting immediate assistance and safe passage to human territory. There was a long silence. Then, a new voice came through the speakers, cold and authoritative. This is Commander Brix of Confederation Security. The shuttle is carrying a stolen prisoner and 2 criminals who violated facility protocols. All nearby ships are ordered to assist in their capture. He is lying, Doctor. Nara broadcast back. Princess Hana of Velrith carries evidence of a massive conspiracy involving Confederation Council members. They want to silence her before the truth comes out. Oh nay. Run-a. Run-a. Nara broadcast back. More ships were arriving now, drawn by the commotion. Human vessels, alien traders, military patrols. The space around them filled with different factions, all watching, all listening. Dramatic claims require proof, Commander Brix said. You have none. The proof is encoded in my DNA, Hana said, taking over the communication. I am Princess Hana, daughter of King Daehyun of Velrith. My father discovered that Confederation officials have been exploiting junior species for over a century. When he tried to expose them, they destroyed my entire world. I am the last witness, the last evidence. That is why they want me dead. Her words echoed across every channel. Thousands of ships heard them. Millions of people across the galaxy listened. Lies, Commander Brix snarled. Desperate lies from a traumatized female who does not know what she is saying. Then let her present her evidence. A new voice interjected. Taeyang recognized it immediately and felt hope surge in his chest. This is Captain Daejung of the human patrol ship. Indomitable. The voice continued. We are entering the area now. If Princess Hana is lying, the evidence will prove it. If she is telling the truth, The galaxy deserves to know. Either way, we are granting her safe passage to human space under our protection. The Indomitable appeared on the scanner. A massive military vessel bristling with weapons. It positioned itself between the small shuttle and the pursuit ships. "This is human interference in Confederation security matters," Commander Brix warned. "This is humanity, protecting a witness, seeking asylum," Captain De Jung replied calmly. "We are well within our rights under Confederation law. If you wish to contest this, file a formal complaint. But you will not fire on this shuttle." The tension stretched like a wire about to snap. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Commander Brix's ships retreated. They docked with the Indomitable an hour later. The moment Taeyang stepped through the airlock, Captain De Jung was there, waiting. He was a tall man with gray hair and sharp eyes, wearing a crisp military uniform. When he saw Taeyang, his stern expression softened slightly. "Corporal Taeyang," he said. "I should have known when I heard about a guard going rogue that it would be you. You always had a talent for doing the right thing at the wrong time." "Captain," Taeyang saluted. "Thank you for coming. Thank me by explaining what trouble you have brought to my ship." They gathered in the captain's briefing room. Taeyang, Hana, Dr. Nara, Captain De Jung, and several other human officers. Hana told her story from beginning to end. She explained the conspiracy, the destruction of Velrith, and the data encoded in her DNA. When she finished, silence filled the room. "This is bigger than I thought," Captain De Jung said finally. "If what you say is true, it means the Confederation itself is corrupt at the highest levels." "It is true," Hana said simply. "But I understand if you do not believe me. I have no proof except my word, and I am just one alien who remained silent for 6 years. Actually," a new voice said from the doorway, "we can prove it." Everyone turned. A young woman entered, wearing the uniform of Human Intelligence Services. She had the same eyes as Taeyang. "Jiwoo?" Taeyang stood, surprised. "What are you doing here?" "My job," his sister replied. She was a data specialist, one of humanity's best. "Captain De Jung called me as soon as he heard your distress signal. I have been analyzing Princess Hana's claims." She activated a holographic display. "If the data really is encoded in her DNA, I should be able to find it. But I will need her permission to run a detailed genetic scan." Hana nodded. "Do whatever you need to do." The medical scan took 3 hours. Jiwoo worked with intense focus, running analysis after analysis on Hana's genetic code. Taeyang stayed with Hana throughout the process, holding her hand when the equipment made her nervous. Finally, Jiwoo stepped back from her workstation, her face pale. "I found it," she said quietly. "The data is there. Millions of files, all compressed and encoded into non-coding DNA sequences. It is the most sophisticated biological data storage I have ever seen." She looked at Hana with something like awe. "You really are a living archive." "Ah. Can you extract it?" Captain De Jung asked. "Yes. But it will take time. And the process is risky. If I make a mistake, I could damage the data or hurt Princess Hana." "How risky?" Taeyang demanded. Jiwoo hesitated. "There is a 15% chance the extraction could cause severe neurological damage or death." "No," Taeyang said immediately. "Find another way." But Hana squeezed his hand. "Do it," she told Jiwoo. "My life means nothing if the truth dies with me. My father encoded this data into my body so it could survive. Let it fulfill its purpose." "Hana," Taeyang began. She looked at him with her strange white eyes, and he saw absolute determination there. "You promised I would be safe. The only way I am ever truly safe is if the conspiracy is exposed and destroyed. So do it." The extraction took 6 hours. Taeyang sat outside the medical bay, unable to eat or sleep, while Ji-woo and her team worked. Dr. Nara sat with him, offering quiet support. Finally, the door opened. Ji-woo emerged, looking exhausted but triumphant. "She is fine," Ji-woo said quickly, seeing Tae-young's expression. "Tired, but fine. And we got everything." She held up a data crystal. Financial records, communication logs, video evidence, names, dates, amounts. It is all here. Proof of systematic exploitation of 43 junior species over 150 years. Theft of resources worth trillions of credits. 17 council members are implicated, along with dozens of high-ranking officials and corporate executives. Captain Dae-jung took the crystal reverently. "This will change everything." "It already has," an officer called from the communication station. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from Confederation Command. They are demanding we turn over Princess Hana and all extracted data immediately." "Denied," Captain Dae-jung said. "Princess Hana has requested asylum in human space, which we have granted. The data is evidence of crimes against sentient beings, which makes it subject to human legal jurisdiction. Sir, they are not accepting that. They are sending a fleet. 20 ships, arriving in 4 hours." Captain Dae-jung looked at the data crystal, then at Tae-young and Dr. Nara. "If we give them what they want, this disappears forever. Billions of beings across the galaxy will never know they were exploited and robbed. The guilty go free." "And if we refuse?" Dr. Nara asked. "Then humanity, the newest and weakest member of the Confederation, will be at war with forces that vastly outnumber us." Tae-young stood. "Then, we fight." "It is not your decision," Captain Dae-jung said gently. "Yes, it is." Tae-young met his former commander's eyes. "Every human on this ship has a choice. We can do what is easy and safe, or we can do what is right. My choice is made. I stand with Hana." Around the room, other officers began to stand. "I stand with her too," Ji-woo said. "As do I," Dr. Nara added. One by one, every human in the room stood. Captain Dae-jung smiled slightly. "Then, I suppose, humanity has made its choice." He activated the ship-wide communication system. "Attention, all crew. We are about to make a stand that may cost us everything. But some things are worth any cost. Truth is one of them. Prepare for battle." 4 hours later, the Confederation fleet arrived. 20 ships surrounded the Indomitable, weapons powered and ready. The human ship was alone, vastly outnumbered. The communication channel opened. "This is Minister Arlen of the Confederation Council," a smooth voice said. "You have one final chance. Surrender Princess Hana and the stolen data, and we will allow your ship to depart peacefully. Refuse, and we will take them by force." Captain Dae-jung looked at Hana, who had insisted on being on the bridge. She nodded. He opened a channel to respond, and Hana stepped forward to speak. The bridge of the Indomitable was silent, except for the soft hum of systems and the quiet breathing of the crew. Outside the viewports, 20 Confederation warships hung in the darkness like predators surrounding wounded prey. Their weapons were powered and aimed. One word from Minister Arlen, and the Indomitable would be destroyed. Hana stood before the communication console, her pale blue skin almost glowing in the dim light. Tae-young stood beside her, close enough to touch, but not touching. He had learned that sometimes the strongest support was simply being present. "Princess Hana," Minister Arlen's smooth voice came through the speakers. "Do not make this worse than it needs to be. Come peacefully, and I promise you will be treated well." Hana looked at Tae-young. "He is lying." "I know," Tae-young said softly. She turned back to the console and made a decision that would change the galaxy. Instead of responding to Minister Arlen privately, she activated every communication system on the ship. She overrode safety protocols and boosted the signal strength to maximum. Then she hacked into the Confederation's public broadcast network. Ji-woo, working at the communications station, saw what Hana was doing and smiled. She is not just calling Minister Arlin, Jiwoo said with admiration in her voice. She is calling everyone. Captain Daejung understood immediately. She is going public. Within seconds, Hana's signal reached every Confederation relay station, every news network, every military vessel, every civilian ship, from the core worlds to the frontier colonies. Beings across the galaxy suddenly received an emergency broadcast. And Hana began to speak. My name is Hana, daughter of King Daehyun, last princess of Velrith. 6 years ago, I watched my world die. 6 years ago, I saw my family murdered and my people destroyed. For 6 years, I remained silent. Too frightened to speak, too alone to trust. Today, I break that silence. Her voice, unused for so long, was now strong and clear. It carried across the void between stars, reaching billions of ears. Everyone believes my planet was destroyed by an unknown enemy. That is a lie. Velrith was murdered by the Confederation itself, by corrupt council members who wanted to hide their crimes. On the bridge of the lead Confederation warship, Minister Arlen went pale. Cut her signal, he shouted to his communications officer. I cannot, sir. She is broadcasting on too many frequencies. It would take hours to block them all, Hana continued. My father discovered that Confederation officials have been systematically exploiting junior species for over 150 years. They stole resources, manipulated markets, controlled governments. 43 species were affected. Trillions of credits were stolen. And when my father tried to expose this conspiracy, they killed him. Then they sterilized my entire planet to destroy the evidence. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. But they failed. My father encoded all his evidence into my DNA using Velrith biotechnology. I am not just a witness. I am the proof. Human specialists have extracted this data. And I am releasing it now to every network, every database, every news organization in the galaxy. You can all see the truth for yourselves. At the communications station, Jiwoo pressed a button. Instantly, millions of files began flooding into public networks. Financial records showing massive, illegal transfers. Communications proving premeditated conspiracy. Video evidence of secret meetings. Names and dates and amounts. All laid bare for everyone to see. Across the galaxy, newsrooms exploded into activity. Journalists began analyzing the data. Historians started connecting patterns. Regular citizens downloaded the files and shared them. Within minutes, the truth was everywhere. Impossible to suppress or deny. Hana spoke into the spreading storm. I remained silent for 6 years because I was afraid. I was alone, traumatized, convinced that speaking would mean death. Then, I met a human guard named Taeyang. She looked at him, and he felt his face grow warm. He did not demand I speak. He did not threaten or bribe or manipulate. He simply respected my silence. He learned my culture, understood my pain, and promised me safety. He is the reason I found my voice again, and through him, I learned something important about humanity. The camera focused on her face as she continued. Humanity is the newest species in the Confederation. They are considered weak, junior, unimportant. But when I needed protection, when the powerful wanted me dead, it was humans who stood between me and destruction. It was humans who risked everything to help me expose the truth. Not because they would gain something, but because it was right. On dozens of worlds, in hundreds of cities, beings stopped what they were doing to listen. In the slums of junior species colonies, where exploitation had been a fact of life for generations, people heard confirmation of what they had always suspected. On core worlds, privileged citizens confronted uncomfortable truths about where their wealth really came from. Some will say I should have remained silent, Hana said. That speaking out will cause chaos and instability. They are probably right. The truth often does cause chaos, but silence is complicity. If I stayed quiet to protect myself, I would be helping the criminals who destroyed my world. I would be abandoning every other species, suffering under the same exploitation. She took a deep breath. So I choose to speak. Not because I am brave, but because I am no longer alone. Humanity taught me that sometimes one voice, speaking at the right moment, can change everything. Today, my voice speaks for every being who has been exploited, oppressed, or silenced by the powerful. Today, the silent become heard. The transmission ended. For a long moment, nothing happened. The warships around the Indomitable remained in position, weapons still powered. Then Jiwoo spoke up from her station. "Sir, I am detecting signals from the Confederation fleet. Internal communications." They sound confused, arguing with each other. Captain Daejung pulled up the intercepted channels. They could hear officers on different ships questioning their orders, demanding to know if what Hana said was true, refusing commands from officers whose names appeared in the exposed files. "The fleet is falling apart," Dr. Nara said with wonder. On Minister Arlen's ship, chaos had indeed erupted. His own crew had accessed the released data and discovered their commander was one of the conspirators. Security officers were moving to arrest him. Similar scenes played out across all 20 ships. Officers turned on corrupt commanders. Crews refused illegal orders. Within an hour, the entire fleet had stood down without firing a single shot. But the consequences spread far beyond one military engagement. On the Confederation homeworld, protesters surrounded the council chambers. Junior species representatives demanded immediate reform. Several council members tried to flee and were arrested at spaceports. The entire government teetered on the edge of collapse. Emergency sessions were called. Investigations launched. Arrests made. The data Hana released was too detailed and too damning to deny. The conspiracy crumbled, like sandcastles before a tide. It took 3 months for the political storm to settle. When it did, the Confederation had changed fundamentally. A new council was elected, with representation expanded to include junior species as equals. Laws were passed to prevent the exploitation that had gone unchecked for so long. Reparations were planned for the affected species. The criminals were tried and punished. Velrith was declared a memorial world. No one would ever live there again. But its memory would serve as a reminder of the cost of corruption and silence. Through it all, Hana remained on Earth, granted permanent asylum. She worked with investigators, testified at trials, and helped build the new systems meant to prevent such abuses in the future. And Taeyang stayed beside her. 6 months after the broadcast, on a cool evening in Seoul, they walked together through a quiet park. Cherry blossoms drifted through the air like pink snow. Hana had learned to appreciate the small beauties of Earth, the way sunlight filtered through leaves, the sound of children playing, the taste of fresh fruit from a market stall. "Do you ever regret it?" Taeyang asked as they sat on a bench overlooking a small pond. "Speaking out changed your life completely. You can never go back to who you were before." Hana considered the question carefully. She had learned to value careful thought before speaking, a habit from her years of silence. "I regret that it was necessary," she said finally. "I regret that my father is not here to see what his sacrifice accomplished. I regret that I am the last Velrith, and my people's culture will die with me." She looked at him, her white eyes reflecting the evening light. "You taught me something important, Taeyang. You taught me that silence can be wisdom, but only if we know when to break it. For 6 years, silence kept me alive. But it was speaking that let me truly live." Taeyang smiled. "I did not teach you that. I just promised you would be safe, and you kept that promise." She reached over and took his hand. It had taken her months to become comfortable with physical touch, but with Taeyang, it felt natural. "Do you know what else you taught me?" "What?" "That home is not a place. It is a feeling. Velrith is gone. But when I am with you, I feel home again. Taeyang felt his throat tighten with emotion. He had spent years after leaving the military believing he had failed to save people who needed him. But here was Hana, alive and healing, proof that sometimes the right action at the right time could make all the difference. You taught me something too, he said softly. I thought I was broken after the military. I took a quiet guard job, because I was afraid of failing again. But protecting you showed me I was not broken. I was just waiting for someone worth fighting for. Today, they sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Around them, life continued. People walking dogs, couples holding hands, children chasing each other through the grass. Normal, peaceful, safe. What will you do now? Taeyang asked eventually. You have testified at all the major trials. The new confederation is stable. You could rest, travel, do anything you want. Hana was quiet for a long moment. I have been thinking about that, she said. I want to create an archive, a place where anyone can learn about my people's culture, art, and philosophy. And I want to help other beings who have survived trauma learn to find their voice again, the way you helped me. That sounds like important work. It is. But I will need help. She looked at him. Hopefully. Will you help me? Taeyang smiled. Always. She leaned her head against his shoulder, a gesture of trust and affection that had taken her months to feel comfortable making. You told me I was safe. Do you remember? In the tunnels, when I was having a panic attack, you said those 3 words. You are safe now. I remember. I want you to know something. Hana said softly. You were right. Not just then, but always. When I am with you, I am safe. Not because you fight for me, though you do. Not because you protect me, though you would. I am safe because you see me. The real me. Not the princess. Not the witness. Not the evidence. Just Hana. And that is worth more than all the kingdoms in the galaxy. Taeyang put his arm around her shoulders, holding her gently. And you see me. Not the soldier, not the guard, not the hero, the news calls me. Just Taeyang. They stayed there as the stars came out, 2 survivors finding peace in each other's presence. Around them, the universe continued its vast turning. But in that moment, everything that mattered was contained in a simple human gesture. 2 people, different in every way that should matter, choosing to face the future together. 5 years later, the Velrith Memorial Archive opened on Earth. It was a beautiful building designed in traditional Velrith style, filled with holographic displays, art installations, and interactive exhibits. Visitors from across the galaxy came to learn about the lost civilization and to honor those who had died. But the archive was more than just a museum. It included a trauma recovery center where survivors of violence and oppression could find support. Hana herself led therapy groups, teaching others that silence could be strength and speech could be healing, and that knowing the difference was wisdom. Taeyang worked beside her, using his experience as a medic and his natural compassion to help others. Together, they built something meaningful from the ashes of tragedy. On the day of the archive's opening, they stood together before a crowd of thousands. Journalists, diplomats, survivors, and supporters filled the plaza. Hana was asked to give a speech. She stood at the podium, no longer afraid of speaking, and said, My father once told me that the Velrith believed words spoken at the right moment could change the universe. For most of my life, I did not understand what he meant. Now I do. 6 years ago, in a dark tunnel, a human guard spoke 3 simple words that changed my entire existence. You are safe now. Those words gave me the courage to speak my own truth, and that truth helped change the Confederation itself. She paused, looking out at the diverse crowd. Humans, aliens, former victims, and their allies, all gathered together. This archive is dedicated to all who have lost their voice to trauma, all who have been silenced by power, all who believe they are alone. You are not alone. You are seen. You are heard. And most importantly, you are safe now. The crowd erupted in applause. But Hana barely heard it. She was looking at Taeyang, standing in the front row, with quiet pride in his eyes. Later, when the ceremonies ended and the crowds dispersed, they walked through the empty archive together, just the two of them. It is beautiful, Taeyang said, looking at the displays showing Velrith art, culture, and history. It is, Hana agreed. But it is not my greatest creation. What is? She took both his hands in hers. This. Us. A life built on truth, trust, and the promise that we will always keep each other safe. That is my greatest creation. That is what I choose to leave behind. Taeyang pulled her close, and she came willingly, no longer afraid of closeness or vulnerability. You are safe now. He whispered into her hair. The same promise he had made in darkness, now offered in light. I know, she whispered back. And so are you. Outside, the stars shone over Earth, the same stars that had witnessed the destruction of Velrith and the birth of a new confederation. Under those stars, two beings from different worlds had found what everyone seeks. A purpose worth living for, and someone who sees them truly and loves them anyway. Hana had spent 6 years in silence, convinced that speaking would mean death. Instead, she discovered that speaking meant life. Her voice had shaken the foundations of galactic power and brought justice to billions. But in the quiet moments between speeches and ceremonies and important work, what mattered most was simple. A human guard had promised her safety, and he had kept that promise, not just by protecting her body, but by creating space for her heart to heal. That was the real story. Not the conspiracy, or the dramatic broadcast, or the political changes. Those were important, but they were not everything. The real story was about kindness offered when it was not required, about respect given when it was not demanded, about one person choosing to see another person's pain and saying, simply and truthfully, you are safe now. Sometimes, that is all it takes to change the universe.